and then I collect raw data, then I make some derived variables out of them which I am finally using for my test. So you don't need to describe all of it in your paper. It just confuses the reader. So you know what you do, just how I derive those variables, put it in the supplementary material. So, and as we are reading papers, I use supplementary materials from papers very often because people provide R codes of how they are analyzing data in supplementary material, how example data sets, raw data sets which you want to look at. So it becomes very useful, and I think it's a very good thing because it allows us to push a lot of things which might distract a reader into another section.
Anything else? Anyone else? I mean, a lot of these things are actually not classroom material at all. You know, all of this is just dependent on you just chatting up. When you hit a wall, we usually do problem solving as we hit the walls. So yeah, so basically now we know, at least I hope most of us know what is available, what are the things that they, how they're supposed to be done or how they could be done better. And the thing is, there are a lot of resources online. There are blogs, there are all kinds of things where people have dealt with various problems. So if you just search the net itself, you start finding, solutions to various problems that we might face. But I think with a good community like us, we should be able to maybe help each other, solve manuscript submission issues, things like that. So I think, we'll be fine soon. And frankly, unfortunately, we don't get this training, when we join, like how to write a manuscript and how to make sure that it gets published is something that we really don't go through it. Yeah, but like for example, in my university, in University of Kent, we have a compulsory course where every first year PhD student has to attend, and it is about writing manuscript and pursuing it. In fact, it's even about reviewing manuscripts. So how do you review a manuscript? How do you give various comments? Things like that. So unfortunately, these things are not there within our frameworks. But yeah.
One more thing about review comments again, which I was missing. It's like when you get a comment about your manuscript, about improving something, or they point out some error with it, please do not send it as such to another journal if it's rejected without incorporating those comments. It has happened to him. One paper came to him, he pointed out serious flaws with the analysis and all that. It came back to him again from another journal.
Without any change.
Without any change. And he wrote to the editor that, why should I review it again? This person has no respect for... always remember that editors and reviewers are actually doing social service. Nobody gets paid to be an editor on a journal. Nobody gets paid to review a journal article. So we all take out time, like our own community. So it's like you should pay, respect the views that somebody has on your manuscript. So if you get comments, make a sincere effort to correct those mistakes before you send it to another journal. And I think anybody who gets an opportunity to review a manuscript, please take it on. It's a great learning experience. It's an amazing experience. And you also realize how tough it is for a reviewer to write all that thing that comes back to this.
Very often when you become a reviewer, you realize that you feel bad to reject a paper because you know how much it is to have written that paper. However bad it is, you feel bad yourself because you've been in the same spot as that student or whoever has sent the paper. So yeah, you do get a little sympathetic, but it's a very good learning experience.
But I think a tendency to massacre a paper dominates in most cases.
So what seems to emphasize most in the conclusion, the way you can...
So I think the best way to deal with the conclusion is to try and bring it into a larger conservation story. And of course, you should know the strengths of your study. Try not to oversell, if you don't have the data but go on a tangent, that is also not safe. So the thing is, there's a paper that we are currently writing, and basically the job is very simple. In fact, one of the data sets, the snares thing comes, it's kind of a, I just tried to make one hypothetical extra column for it. What I actually showed there was the detection probability of snares. It was actually detection probability of snares. It wasn't actually encounter rate of snares. I just made a second column, I doubled it and then added some random values and made it like a second thing. But basically what is happening in this data set that we have is across multiple years, law enforcement efforts, like MIST type. Like M-Stripes, there's something going on in Sumatra where they do law enforcement monitoring. People walk and then pick up snares of tigers and ungulate snares and things like that. So what the whole story is at the end of it is that across years the number of teams doing these surveys has increased, and along with them the rate of getting snares has increased. And if you we did an occupancy kind of analysis, so at the end of it the probability of detecting snares has increased over years, but the change in occupancy of snares, which is basically how many snares are there in the landscape, is not really changing. That's rather stable. So the fact what is happening is that although the teams are getting better at finding snares, it is not really translating into the reduction in poaching in that area. Poaching is still the same. So what we are now trying to sell it as, of course there are other things also, but what we are now trying to sell it as is to look at things like conservation investment. Where does money, so that's why we are using that science paper that I was just talking about. So we're trying to use that as an umbrella. We know that money needs to be spent, and we know that a lot of money goes into law enforcement. But how best can you improve law enforcement effort? So we talk about the analysis and how this itself can be an improvement to ensure that we get informed decision on law enforcement, and also talk about what are the fallout of this is that how much of money you pump into your teams to do better patrolling. The money is not going down to the communities for education on not poaching. So that can be a story to tell. So things like that. So if you are able to sell it, the larger the whatever paper you are able to find to sell it,
every time the moment you pitch your story for a species, it limits the value of the paper completely. So even say for example if it's bustard, GIB for example, bustard in itself is a cool species and everything, but if you attempt to say pitch the entire story in terms of how to save a species, critically endangered species, which is almost at the brink of extinction, that will get you more attention than saying that bustard in Kutch are facing this problem and are going to go extinct. So it completely depends on the pitch of the story. So like for example there, the Sumatra paper also, they're having a discussion on where to put it, and they're like, if you make it a tiger snare story, it's not going to go beyond conservation biology. Okay, because it's a tiger story. So can we attempt to make it like a law enforcement story for species and prioritizing conservation and this thing? Because then you can even pitch it as science. Okay, that will appeal to anybody concerned with law enforcement and conservation anywhere in the world. But the moment you make it a single species story, very few people are going to read it. Okay, maybe it has potential implications for other things, but when you are not seeing it,
communicate it like that.
Yeah, you are not seeing it, how do you expect anybody outside that community to see it? So the thing is, every time you have a story from a single site on a single story, try to think, it's not always possible, but there are times when it is possible to sell it as a case study for a larger thing which can be replicated elsewhere also. Or at least other people from other study systems, other species, other issues can use the lessons from the study to inform similarly.
See, all of us work in a situation where we have some big issue. Right? We're all dealing with at least one of the large biodiversity issues. Either be it habitat loss, or we're talking about connectivity problems, or we're talking about just species declines, or for that matter, like Ninad, we're talking about medicinal value of biodiversity or something like that. So these are extremely large conservation problems. So whatever work you do, if you're able to identify your theme area and pitch it in the biggest papers that are coming from there, you just generally increase the value of your paper. And basically at the end of it, see, all of us, we're all just research fellows, And what we should be striving towards is ensuring that we get good impact factor papers out of the work we do. So because it's only going to add to our own series. Let's take it as a selfish motive. And frankly, if you don't take it as a selfish motive, you're never going to do the job. So yeah, you just got to be a little selfish about getting your paper in the best place possible and working towards it. And I think in many ways that brings in a lot of other things. In fact, it just brings in a lot of discipline into the way you do your research itself.
And the thing is, like, frankly speaking, we don't even have any other avenue where we get good criticism other than when you put your paper in a journal. Otherwise, nobody actually, say, even if this community, we might be able to discuss each other's work, but no one's going to take the pain of reading every paper that is cited in your paper to constructively comment on it. So, review process is the only place where it happens. So, even for learning and making your work better, it's a great thing to do. And like, that's the serious thing, yeah? Like, the moment you make your paper about one single species from one single thing, it's really limiting, because even an editor doesn't want to publish something which is going to be useful for only somebody else who's going to come to the same area to study the same species. Because everybody wants something which is going to be, which is going to draw wider audiences. So that's it. I'm not being able to write my philosopher's papers as philosopher's papers. It's like that, you know. I have to talk about how the ecology of these species can inform us about some larger ecological phenomena. So it really makes you think. And the moment you want to hit a journal with a good impact factor, you really have to think on how to pitch it better, pitch it broader. And I think we all should do it because we have some of the finest data on most of the critical species in our country. So I think we owe it to everyone to make an effort to make it reach the best places so that more people can access our work and get to know about our work. So any more thoughts? Come on, yeah, you shouldn't be so silent.
From the time we started. So there's one more resource which I pasted on Ferris yesterday. Was this thing called Peerage of Science. I don't know how many of you were able to browse through it. It's a very interesting service. Basically what they do is, you can submit your paper, and instead of going like to, Peerage of Science, Peerage of Science is basically kind of community peer review code. So instead of you sending it to a journal and then some 2 people reviewing it, what happens in Peerage of Science is you put up your paper, many people review it, you get comments, you're able to improve your manuscript, and it's a nice, it's kind of an online forum kind of a thing where you get a review. And now what's happened is slowly big journals are searching Peerage of Science for papers. So the moment they find a paper that suits them, they write to you and say, we like your paper in Peerage of Science, can we publish it? So the very nice thing that's happening now is, you might just write the paper, but some journal like say Ecography, OECOS, that's evolutionary ecology, they come and then they'll say, okay fine, we'll accept your paper. So it's very interesting. So it's actually, you get a much broader, peer review process, and now journals are also taking it up as a form of review. Because that it cuts their review process time down, and it actually just goes from submitting the manuscript to acceptance, which in fact benefits them, because it's like a faster acceptance turnaround time.
And the other important thing is, some of us feel, that our English is not up to the mark, and that's why we are not being able to communicate our papers in the best of ways. So never let that be the hindrance. If you need help, just seek help. There are some online places forums, there are paid services which will do the English for you. If you need to take that help, if you think that is the only limitation, first of all, we all should work on it. We have to remember that we work in a field where English is the only language of communication, so we better get better with it. And the second thing is, people might say that, being scientists, we don't need to know English very well. That's a false notion, because unfortunately, unlike poets and writers, describe things in 100 words. We have to be very concise, very precise. You know, we cannot waste words. We have to write within word limits. So we actually have to be better than many other people who are in the writing business. So we all have to work towards making it better for ourselves. Second thing is, in spite of that, if you feel that you need some help, take it. There are paid services. Apart from it, you can use your colleagues to look through your manuscript and get it in a better shape if you feel the need. Don't shy away from it, because sometimes your work is way more valuable to be just left aside because you are not confident about your language. Don't let that be a deterrent. Seek help and get it out. Even sometimes you might feel like, for example, not only English, sometimes it might be you are not very familiar with quantitative, so you are scared of analysis. Okay, but there might be somebody who can do it for you. You just have to maybe add that person as a co-author. Anyways, we are giving authorship to a lot of people who don't deserve to be on it at all. Okay, so if adding one more person can add a lot of value to your work, I think take it. Like, in one case, I needed some morphology data, I didn't have it. And there was one person offering that. I was happy to just add him as a co-author if I could use that data and add more meaning to my work. So similarly, don't be insecure about it, End of the day, if it's your data, you are anyways going to be the first author. You're anyways going to guide the work, but if you need some help, take it. Take it if it can get you to a better place.
Yeah, in fact, even this English thing, like PH of Science, there's also an English writing service, free service available. It's like a community thing. Unfortunately, I'm not able to remember the site. Once I get it, I'll post it on the thing. That's also a very useful thing. You can send in your thing, and they purposely, the whole aim of that community is to just help, especially third world countries, fix their language for publication. So I'll pull it out. It's there.
When we are putting an unpublished work in a forum like this, multiple, what's the security of it?
Yeah, so that is always, it's always a doubt. I mean, for that matter, it can be in a community like this, or it could be an open computer like this. Anyone can walk away with your data. So that much, I think you have to think. Yeah, but the thing is, these guys are very, very clear about the submission process. So there is it's not like you just send an email and then it gets passed around. There is a proper submission thing, and it's all out in the open. So it's a completely open process. From the beginning, you get to see the idea, you get to see the paper and stuff like that. So in many ways, it's very transparent. So if someone picks on you, you will get to know. But I think such things are also unfortunately unavoidable in some cases. So yeah, at the end of it, yeah, you can. All sincere people will not do it. But those who are going to do it, thieves will do it anyway. So that much you can't do. Yeah, unfortunately. Anything else that? So does anyone have a paper that they want to write and want to maybe discuss it? I think we should go for lunch, but does anyone have a paper that they're not able to write and would like some idea on how to pitch it best? We could maybe quickly help someone out. Is anyone stuck with the paper idea and not able to get past it?
I have an idea. It's just an observation. I don't have data as such. So in Okhla Country, Delhi, they face problem of water happen. So in 2009, when I did my dissertation, area had 20 to 30% water happen. When we did this Okhla project in 2010, 70% in during winter
message.
Is there also invasive species?
Yeah, which is also an exotic.
When you don't follow up on your management practices, then one invasive can be replaced by this and that. So you're building up the resources for.
Okay. So I think we all agree that the major theme in this is invasives. Agree? Okay.
Ogla wetland is actually a man-made wetland and it's on river Yamuna. Yeah.
Is it an IBA?
Yeah, it's a man-made.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, it's an IBA. So it's an IBA, it's an invasive, it's man-made. What else do we have to say about it? Then we have active management, yeah, sorry. So I think these are the central themes. Agree? So are we going to now try and figure out a way that, so what is the final thing? What do you think? What is your story at the end of it? I agree your observation is there, but because you're the person with the data, let's assume. And why don't you just tell us what you think the final, is it good, what is bad? I think what he said is right. When you try and remove one, you are faced with the problem of another invasive. So I think invasives certainly are the central theme.
But I think the thing is that invasives are impacting bird species. So I mean it's a good observation that when you are trying to manage one invasive, you are getting the other invasive to come. But it is actually impacting the bird species.
Yeah.
And that's what it is.
That's what, so this brings in the words, right? Okay, I think in many ways we already have a good pitch. Okay, first of all, IBA, lots of money goes into IBAs for various things. So we have a problem. IBAs are, designated bird areas, and like all water, many of the water systems, this is a man-made water system and requires active management. And invasives, often like any other natural system, play a big role. And how these invasives affect various birds, we don't really know. But what we know is how various active management forms can change the way or composition in which something happens, right? So let's.
It's about just not advocating blind removal without proper research.
So let's call that the main message. What do you think of the main message?
Controlled removal. Uninformed management practices can.
Actually, water acid removal was suggested by us only. When we did the
Okay, that's important.
Yeah,
Okay,
like,
it's not uninformed.
Yeah,
It is informed.
No,
Yes.
It is an uninformed also in the sense it's not.
We didn't know the complete
we
consequences.
didn't consider
The complete consequences.
Yeah, we suggested because water acid is an invasive species.
So let's just call it unintended consequences of active management.
Invasive species removal.
Unintended.
Actually, it is ill-informed only.
Ill-informed management.
Yeah. Unintended consequences. Actually, yeah. Then we say consequences of an ill-informed. Are you? Okay. So what do you want to change this to? Consequences of a management intervention.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay, no problem. Okay, agreed. So,
Evidence-based conservation can be teaching into this.
yeah, evidence-based conservation will come in.
Evidence-based management.
Okay. So what is the first one? Just can you put up that?
Why do you do this?
Why did you do this? Is it okay? Okay. So why?
alternatives.
What is your option?
See, what I think is maybe a decade or more than that. So nobody has studied vegetation communities as such there in that century. So I don't think
Maybe just.
So what's the bigger cause that's, eutrophication or something like that, excessive going of nutrients that's...
it's double yoga, okay? If you remove water acid, it will come anyway. So you have to
So
keep
there is already a level of eutrophication that's making it conducive for water invasion.
whatever is really nice.
Waves of invasion. Removal
How
without
to
destination.
Okay. Now let's really let's really try and help her out with this. So why did you do it? Why did you do it?
But I have one question.
It's an observation.
It's an observation actually.
Yeah.
Upma, don't you think it's too early to think that, after pistia, another invasive, if you try to remove pistia, or if you let it be there in Okla, don't you think it will go by itself, or it would be, some kind of succession? Some other species will come in and do something. Maybe the removal of Iconia is the best way to deal with it. And pistia is coming because resources are there and it's just occupying the space removed by
Actually, I would like to point out something that in West Bengal in Shatragachi, on removal of wet water hazard, the bird diversity actually increased there this year. So,
Yes, see, that was like for in case of Okla, in case of any vertical restoration, you need the sedimentation and all. So in case of Okla, because it's a barrage and they need this capacity, so they remove sediments after the millennia or something like that. So
I think all of that should come into the active management and man-made story, right? Because first of all, I think if you're able to explain clearly that here's a man-made system where things like sedimentation and natural processes are controlled, active management has to happen in order to be able to ensure some sort of. So are we all becoming co-authors on this? I'm going to ask you. No, just joking.
so the other thing was, I think she was stuck because there was no data. It was just like one time. And I was thinking that maybe she could, and the forest department thought that these had not come subsequently. So maybe she could get some sort of data from active bird. I think the census that they must be doing or like Delhi birds as a group, go collect data from them and try and see whether they match up. And actually what Peter also said is a good way to go forward. Maybe do some simple meta-analysis on if Iconia removal has helped anywhere. Like she pointed out one example, and it might be.
This little paper of yours can become a big paper.
Yeah, exactly.
It can actually become a really big paper.
So how evidence-based conservation is actually taken up through a meta-analysis of different things, whether Iconia
because in some other areas they might have worked on Iconia or Pistia. So looking at that aspect,
is it doing any good anywhere? So you can just make it like that.
because if you look at the morphology of this,
and make this Pistia example just one example amongst many.
For example, in your discussion last sentence, for example,
case study of
because if you look at the morphology of two species, the bird community will definitely differ. Because Iconia's leaves, they are much more broader than what Pistia has. So definitely the jacanas and everyone will be.
Okay, but now let's just take it down back to this exercise quickly. So why did you do this work? Let's assume you did it as a proper study.